So to start off, thank you for joining with me today. I'm Helen Bui, a Brunel alumni, and I'll be taking you through my journey. So to start off, this is just a agenda of what I'll be talking about today. Who am I? Who is Red Hat? What do I do? My journey and just some advice and our EMEA. So EMEA means Europe, Middle East, and Africa graduate program in Red Hat if you're interested. Okay, so who am I? I studied computer science, network computing with a placement year at Brunel between 2013-17. I worked for a media, AI marketing, education, and software company as a support administration engineer. There's many names out there for this specific role, so this title is just a generalized name based on my previous titles. And fast forward, I'm now 27 and working for Red Hat IBM as a business systems analyst, specializing in process improvement product owner. And for those of you who don't know Red Hat is also IBM, as IBM acquired us in 2019 for $34 billion. Red Hat is the world's leading provider of enterprise open source software solutions using a community-powered approach to deliver reliable and high-performing Linux, hybrid cloud, container, and Kubernetes technologies. So our headquarters is in Raleigh, North Carolina, with offices around the world. And business systems analyst, what do we do? So for those of you who might be interested in roles outside of software engineering or domain architecture, for example, this might be of your interest, as this does not require you to be hands-on with code, but just as involved in the technical discussions with developers. So as a BSA, business systems analyst, we evaluate companies' operating systems, procedures, and design improvements. We consult, understand customer requirements, research, review the complexity and benefits before we implement, produce documentations, and lead training sessions. If you're thinking of going into being a BSA, it's very broad. Loads of companies are looking for a BSA. Therefore, there is job security in there. The name opens opportunities for you to go into different departments within a company. And with the skills and knowledge that you have, you can move into being a project manager, product owner, or a Scrum Master, for example. Next slide. Okay, so I added in this slide to show you the structure of my team. We all work very closely and rely heavily on one another as we deliver different services to our internal stakeholders. I am under operational excellence, but as you can see, there's other teams. So depending on the dynamic of the team that you're in, there can be BSAs in each category. But for now, we are only under operational excellence, automation, and analytics. I won't go into full detail as to what each team provides as a service, though if you are interested, feel free to ask at the end during the Q&A session. So I just have here, which is our mission, partnering with associates across IT and Red Hat to analyze, enhance, automate, and document their projects, processes, and services, and so on. Okay. So now we're getting into the interesting part, which is my journey. To start off, I did a placement year. So that's why there was a 4-year and then I graduated. I joined Haymarket for my placement year as an IT service desk analyst, and it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made, as it really kickstarted my career before graduating university. I'm not going to speak for everyone, as we all have our own experiences, but before I got there, there were many obstacles, and it did start to really, knock my confidence and my future plans, because I was rejected by a lot of companies, probably more than 30, with no explanation. I didn't even get to the first interview, and probably was only able to attend a handful of interviews before they would say I lacked experience in the role. I didn't have experience working in a company. It didn't sound like this job was for me. So maybe you should apply for a different position. In the end, I do want to say, don't let that stop you from applying in general. It is an experience, and it's always great to go through the interviews to feel comfortable and confident for when you really like a role. So I got this job where I least expected it. I was part of the Brunel Facebook group. I'm pretty sure most of you probably are in that group anyways, where a Brunel alumni working for Haymarket shared a post looking for an IT intern. I was able to get an interview, and with just that one interview, I was accepted. So this placement made me see how hard it would be if I was to graduate without any practical experience and then try looking for a job. So I didn't necessarily go through Reed or specific company websites, and instead it was through a referral. For me, it was also the moment I realized connecting with people is the way forward, and you'll have a better chance at securing a job. This, of course, is all based on my personal experience, so don't let that be a showstopper and stop you from applying through those pages. I just have in here like a list of things that we did and why this was good for me during my placement year. And then so after my placement year, I went back to uni to do my final year. So that's where I got the job at Brunel Library. I applied there, and I was, I wanted to continue to grow and learn new tools and technologies in a new environment while studying. I got the job straight away since I had previous experience with Haymarket, and I think having the technical background contributed to the successful application. It's good to, keep yourself busy, connect with new people, and I, of course, also wanted to make money. I only worked there for 4 months from September to January, and I'll explain why. So after 4 months, I left my job at Brunel Library because I wanted to work for Quantcast full-time as an IT service administrator, even though I was still studying. You might be wondering why, how did I get to Quantcast? So again, this is all based on connection and referral. During my placement year at Haymarket, I became very close friends with a manager there who left on the same day as me. He reached out to me whilst I was still studying at Brunel Library and told me to come for an interview at Quantcast, which is the AI marketing company. At first, I was really reluctant to go because I was still at Brunel and I was in my final year. And, all of the work was coursework based. So luckily I didn't have to go to any lectures, but thought there's no harm in going for an interview and potentially mastering the interview process when I graduate. So I knew that I also didn't want to go back to Haymarket. So I visited the office, went through the interview process with my ex-colleague, and then with my potential new manager, who is based in Dublin. Therefore, the interview was virtual, and I was hard on the spot and had to make a decision. At that point, I also considered dropping out of university to focus on the full-time job. But my friend, who's actually still a very close friend of mine, also from Brunel, studying the same course, told me to do my best with both because I was so close to finishing, and you never know, it'll be really rewarding at the end. So fast forward, I graduated with a 2-1 and have a full-time job, though, as a contractor. I added in here the differences between a contractor because I want you to also be aware of what that means. So when you're a contractor, you don't benefit from the full-time employee package. In case some of you don't know the pros and cons of being a contractor and then a full-time employee, I've displayed it in the slide. But the good thing was that by being in that role, that was my step to the global exposure. So I was able to work with people that I wouldn't have worked with if the company was only UK based. So that was really nice, and just getting used to the virtual working and connecting with one another, especially with the time zone differences. This was also actually the moment where I really felt stuck because, as you saw, there was a path which was always support positions. And I wanted to do more. I wanted to feel like I was contributing to the company and not just supporting people on their issues and requests. So I did lose patience. I felt lazy. I was complaining all the time on what I was doing on a daily basis. There was a constant routine. So during this time in my life, I was really grateful that I had the job, but because they did treat us really well. They gave us breakfast, lunch, and dinner for free, but it just wasn't for me in what I was doing. So I took on the opportunity to do things outside of my position, hoping that it would open doors for me, and maybe took an interest in other areas. So I really liked identifying processes, streamlining workflows, and improving our ticketing system. And then what I was able to do was work with senior peers to assist on their project. So this was the time I took the initiative and presenting an area of improvement to the managers, and I wanted this to be mine from start to finish. So now, at this point, I successfully led and implemented a global onboarding and offboarding process that is automated. But because I was a contractor, there's no credit goes to you because it's supposed to go to a full-time employee. And they didn't even know how to maintain the back end with updating scripts or making necessary enhancements. So this really took my drive away, and I was ready to leave. And this was the moment that I put my LinkedIn profile to, open to opportunities. So now this gets to Red Hat. So with Red Hat, I was headhunted on LinkedIn by an IT director at the time. I did not know who Red Hat was, what their culture was, and I simply had no interest until my colleague at Red Hat, the same colleague or manager who hired me, said like I was crazy if I wasn't going to go for it. They're really massive. So I was like, you know what, there's no harm, let's go for it. I had 2 interviews for the regional support position, and you must be thinking, why go from a role that you don't like to then work for another company doing the same thing? So to me, I saw this as an opportunity because during the interview, they said there is a lot of growth and there's a possibility to move to a new department, which Comcast did not offer. The position was also supporting customers outside of the UK. So with Comcast, it was only UK, Paris, and the US, I believe, whereas Red Hat, it's broader than that. So I wanted exposure to other companies to gain more global knowledge and experience. And obviously, if you're not sure about the company you're applying for, I always look at Glassdoor as a great place to see if the company fits what I'm looking for. You'll see employees state their pros and cons of working there. So I was a regional IT support engineer for 2 years. People knew me and I had a reputation for the IT EMEA team. So again, if you don't know what EMEA is, it's Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I did actually at some point threaten to leave them on numerous occasions because I just had enough and I wasn't progressing anywhere, and they told me to wait. So instead, they put me on a global project supporting a team in Raleigh while still in that position and doing the responsibilities in that role. And so after that project was successful, they opened a position for me to join the continuous improvement team, which was my aim the moment I went for my first interview at Red Hat. So this was my breakthrough moment. Is there a question? Oh, okay. So the key is to be consistent, be involved, participate, whether it's for work or social, be a performance overachiever and show your willingness to learn and develop. And now here I am today as a business systems analyst since April 2019. I do see a question about company swag. So what that means is you get given, so when I was at Quantcast, you get given like a flask and then clothing, and you also get, I had an Echo, like an Amazon Echo, but it had the Quantcast logo on it and loads of other like technologies. And you can use that. I think you get points, so you can buy things as well with those points. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so here I want to talk about the benefits of doing a placement, why connections are important, and just general information about working remotely in an industry. If you're not sure about a placement year, especially the first and second year students, I would strongly recommend it, though it's completely up to you. It's your own path. I do have a lot of friends from Brunel who didn't do one, and they are in very well-paid jobs, such as a cybersecurity trainer instructor in QA, and another who is a software engineer for Bank of America. And I have a list here as to why I think it's good, but the decision's up to you. So after hearing my journey, I do have connections here because that's what's guided me, and it is a huge benefit because whoever you're friends with now and whoever you're speaking to in class for a project, they may be the ones who can get you a job or have the ability to refer you to their company. Okay, so working remotely, we rely heavily on collaborative tools such as Google Suite, Lucidchart. So Lucidchart is where we create workflows and diagrams to show the as is in the future state. Smartsheet, where we do our project planning and assign tasks to make members responsible, and just meeting regularly with the team. So it may be hard now with meeting remotely and balancing the skills and time, but it'll be better and easier when you're working. We have 2 meetings a week for an hour and 1 to 2 meetings in the same week for 30 minutes to check in on one another. This is also known as a scrum for those of you who are working in projects, and refinement calls to go through what we have, and we talk about items that are in progress, to do, blockers, and anything that you need support on. This is a time you raise issues, difficulties, and are generally struggling, we talk about it and find a solution and work together, as the end game is still the same, which is to deliver successfully and effectively. In those meetings, we do have a project manager and a team manager who will help us prioritize our work based on metrics and organization directions. They lead and drive us to success, and that is the difference between industry and education. In corporate, if you've taken ownership of owning a task to completion and then realized you didn't feel comfortable and didn't have the skill sets to continue, don't be shy to voice your opinion to the team, as that does not mean you're incompetent. The team is there to help and guide you. There will always be someone to help you, and if not, find someone or another colleague to partner and train with you. So as you know, working remotely is the new norm. It's nice to have the option. This especially works well for me, as I'm able to save time from traveling. As you can imagine, for me to travel to London, it's an hour and a half. So that's 3 hours where I could have been working and been productive. My team is also all based in the US, one in Paris, and I'm the only one in the UK. Therefore, virtual collaboration is the only method unless you're willing to relocate. And that can be an option if some of you want to make that move. This also gives you opportunities to work and be in another country. If your company allows it, if you enjoy traveling and making money, then why not? Okay. And I do have in here the EMEA graduate program, if you are interested. So we don't actually have a specific graduate external page for students and graduates to visit, apart from the generalized page, which I have up here. Feel free to add that to your browser and have a look. So in 2021, we had a total of 23 graduates in the EMEA region in 2021. Yep. So the KS graduates in other regions. So if you're an international student, definitely check out the page, as you can filter to another country. I just have up here like what the process looks like. And successful graduates will have a permanent 16-month contract. And after the contract, you will stay on as full-time employee in one of the rational functions: pre-sales, services, customer experience, and engagement. For example, that could be a solution engineer, solution architect, and others where you'll be required to be certified in Linux and other technologies, because in these roles, clients will be looking at you for guidance and for you to show them how the software will work with their system and with their requirements. I have a picture here of just the students or the graduates who join the you to complete to expand your skills at Red Hat. We value accountability and commitment, which includes taking personal responsibility for continuous learning and just gain the valuable skills and knowledge that will boost your ability to serve customers and kickstart your career. Okay. And that is all. And I have a live Q&A slide here.
Thank you very much, Helen. That was brilliant. If you have any, it's packed with so many tips, I don't know where to start. If you have any questions, you can either ask them in the chat and Mark will voice them, or raise your hand and we'll unmute you basically, and you can ask the question directly to Helen. So I'm opening the floor for questions, and while I'm waiting for you to form your questions, I'll ask my first question. Helen, you mentioned the importance of networking, and you have so much evidence that networking works and how it's impacted your career. Do you have any tips, any strategies for successful networking? How do you approach it?
So I know that Brunel offers a lot of like networking events for you to go to, and it really depends on the person, you know, who you're talking to. But I feel like networking when you're already in a job is definitely key. You know, you might end up being friends with them or participating in a work with them, and that's how you end up building that relationship and being able, you know, to go to where you want to be.
Again, thank you. Any questions, do not be shy. Helen is here to answer our questions. Yes, Mark.
Oh, you're on mute.
So we have a question from Glenn. How do I get a placement at Red Hat?
Oh, you'll have to go onto the form and just have a look at the jobs that you are interested in. And then I feel like it'll be good if you let me know that you're interested, so at least I can kind of help you that way. But I'll need to know your background and everything on your LinkedIn to kind of push that forward, and if the skills that you have fits what they're looking for.
I've got a question. You've mentioned LinkedIn a few times.
Mm-hmm.
How crucial do you think it is to use LinkedIn effectively? And are there any tips in how you can organize what you put up on LinkedIn to maximize your potential?
Oh, good question. Fill in all the tabs that they have, you know, your skills, your projects, your hobbies and whatnot. And also when you're talking about your position, be very clear. You know, when you're writing a CV, exactly the same, you know, you would say developed, presented, gained and whatnot. So that, and obviously a picture is key. Not a lot of people might think that, but a picture is very important. And then just connect with anyone that you see and you might be interested. So, you know, when you're on LinkedIn and you apply for a position, I would say also connect with the recruiter that released that job on there. So at least you have that connection there and you can reach out to them directly without having to wait until they're, you know, ready to look at the CV. Yeah, and you know, put in your skills and the projects that you've done, because they do look at that.
I do have a follow-up on that, because you mentioned key performance indicators that and that should be up to date, and that's kind of crucial for promotion as well in the company. I was wondering what key performance indicators are important for Red Hat, and how could you try to fulfill them even before you're in the company? Show evidence of that in your CVs, basically.
Okay, so in Red Hat, we look at how you generated growth, whether it be sales or customer satisfaction. I'm pretty sure a lot of you who are not in a company, you're probably working as like a waitress or, you know, working somewhere else. Customer satisfaction, and you know how many people you help to show that you're a team player. How you save. So another thing was like how you save company time and money. This could be due to streamlining processes or you implementing automation. But if you're working not in corporate, then it could be, you know, you found a product cheaper in a different market, and then that's where you know, save the money for the company there. Tasks and projects you manage or completed. So how did you drive the teams to success? Your engagements to the company and the team. And, you know, you have technical skills. So how did you use those skills to show results when you're working in Brunel and in your projects? So you can highlight the projects, the code that you've been using to your advantage. And it's also important to try and phrase it where you chose to use this programming language for your benefit and not because the uni tells you to do it. So if you have the job experience, you know, it is also a bonus.
I have another question from Glenn. Glenn. So Glenn says, connections are much easier to make live in person. However, making connections on a profile, I think they're imagining through LinkedIn here, is challenging for me. What tips do you think would help me?
Okay, so the picture, the title, the information that you put into it, showing that you're growing with the skills and projects that you're doing. Trying to think what else. Do you have your profile open for opportunities? Are you connecting with people? Are you like going online searching for those people and then reaching out to them and say, hey, I'm interested in this Google. Do you have any positions that might be good for me? I'll definitely have to have a look at the profile first to give more information.
Stasha has a question here. It says, Red Hat is about Linux. Do you have any concerns you may have little exposure if you've got little exposure to Linux. Is that, I think that's what Stash is asking. Yeah.
So you're saying like when you join a company and you don't have exposure. Okay, yeah. So this is great because I didn't even know who Red Hat was. I don't even know what Linux was. So when I was really, when the director reached out, he said, I was like, I don't have Linux experience. So is that going to be a blocker? And he said no. So it really depends on if the recruiter is willing to accept that you don't have the skills and give you the chance to learn. So if you don't have the exposure, don't be shy to be honest that, it's new to me, but I can learn on the job. And, it's all about practical experience. I have the coding experience or the, using the program languages. So it wouldn't be anything different. It's just a new tool or operating system even.
Maybe complementing that question, what training is available to you at work, and how are you encouraged to take training?
Okay, so we have a Red Hat University. So the moment you're an employee, you're already re-enrolled onto that, and you can go onto that tool to look at the courses that you want. So if you're new to Red Hat and you want to learn about Linux, you can apply for a Linux training course. There's different timings, so it will fit you regardless. And you can also have the LinkedIn. If your team wants to give you more exposure, they'll put you on external training. And also, because I was a support engineer, and obviously you have to know Linux, you'll just be thrown into the deep end and you just have to be hands-on with it. And that's where you get to learn everything.
Jumping topics, Glenn has another question, and I'll come back to Stasha after that. So Glenn says, the tech market is very wide around jobs, and in computer science, it does vary. I find myself being intrigued by different careers. How do I narrow down the options?
Oh, good question. I don't know how to even answer this question, because I want to know like what you're interested in to really give you an answer. Like, for example, you might be interested in in dancing. Maybe you could, use the skills that you have by building a website, making your dancing career more known, and then putting in some, I don't know, they do have like TikTok dances that makes it more interesting. And then, that's how you would go into that career path, I guess. But yeah, I would have to think about your question properly.
Maybe making this question a bit more personal. How did you converge to what you're doing? How did you figure out what you loved when you, as a computer science student, exposed to so many different options, you chose a path, and what led you to choose this path?
Oh, I shouldn't say like I just knew, but when you're actually obviously not everyone has this opportunity, but I was in a startup company. So when you're applied to a position, you're exposed to everything. Everything ends up being your responsibility. So, and also when you're in a corporate environment, you see how people do things. And then as you're watching them, you're like, actually, I want to know more about that. Can you show me what you do? And you can bounce around and then make that connection and see what you like. So for me, I really liked identifying solutions, because when I was following processes that they already implemented, I always had a question about it. Like, why are you doing it like this? This does not make any sense, and that's when I knew that was where I really like doing.
So a couple more questions come in. I think one of those is a jokey question from, are you a Linux geek now?
No.
Really?
No, no. I wouldn't say so. When I was a support engineer, probably, but it's been a few years now and I don't remember.
Okay, Andila has asked, and bearing in mind you weren't studying as a computer science, as a business computing student, but as a computer science student, but she is asking about business computing. So if studying business computing, do you get the same chance to go into a business analyst role as perhaps a variant of what you did?
Maybe, but I can't say for sure because I never actually looked for a business systems analyst role, like ever. I didn't even know what the name was for what I like to do. And when I graduated, I wanted a technical path. You know, I wanted to do programming. I wanted to do, you know, support, like engineering side of things. So that's why I went to the support role. But as I was in it, that's when I realized, you know, this is not for me. So I don't, there is junior business analyst jobs out there, and I know that you can apply to them, but I don't know how easy it would be.
Okay, Faisal has asked, again, you may not have the experience of that, but you could probably imagine moving from your own experience to think about this. I'm interested in cyber, but all graduate roles and internships are way above my skill level. How could I improve on that? Or are there any techniques that I can use to get around it?
Oh, that's what I don't like about the graduate roles. They do ask for more than what it says. And also remember that, you know how you're reading the job descriptions and it says is way above your skill levels. Don't let that, you know, stop you from applying anyways. Because when the director reached out to me, I looked at the profile, the job description, and I had pretty much 50%. I didn't have everything. So, you know, it's completely how you present yourself, and also if the person who's hiring you is willing to accept that and, you know, make you grow.
And I think that relates to Glenn's question too about, are there any jobs that hire on practical merit, you know, where you can take your existing skills and use those as non-academic skills to push for positions in work.
So when you say practical merit, is it like education practical work, or you mean like they've worked in a company before?
Glenn, if you want to chip in there, maybe you could ask that question yourself. I'm not quite sure what you meant by that. I would guess that practical merit is much more the having done a job or having done some work rather than having a qualification in it.
Okay. Yes, loads and loads of jobs are looking for practical skills. Like, you know, when I first went for my placement year, they told me that I didn't have corporate skills or any just general experience in the position. So for me, that was just like a shocker, because I'm applying for an intern, a placement. Of course, I'm not going to have any skills. So why are you even asking me? It's true. So yeah, you will be able to get a job if you have the practical side of things.
So Faisal asks a very practical question about LinkedIn. Should I link my GitHub to my LinkedIn?
Why not? Absolutely. Keep it growing.
Great.
Maybe expanding on the questions being asked about practical merit. When you're evaluating CVs in your company, what are your filters on? This is basically also trying to expand on the business computing question. Are your filters on the degrees, or are you filtering on what skills students are able to present in their CVs?
Okay, so I only get CVs that's been passed through the talent acquisition or the people team. So I don't know if they have a filter, but when a CV does get to us, we look at, you know, their history, if, you know, they're willing to progress, if they're willing to adapt to the company value, loads of different areas. But if you do have, depends on the role too. So if we're looking for a junior BSA and, you know, you want to have a jump start into this position, and your CV, you know, you just fresh out of university, we would have some concerns. But in the interview, we would be looking to you to be like, you know, what can you give apart from, you know, just the educational side, and to know you a bit better, you know, you want to learn.
Okay, I'm going to ask another question, seeing as we've got none coming in at the moment. It's about your slide up here about Red Hat women's leadership.
Yes.
And so tell me a little bit about that. But obviously, there are some kind of issues around putting women into leadership roles. And I'm really interested to hear, both from the point of view of Red Hat, what is happening to support this, and in general, because you work now at a few places, how those kind of skills are being supported and appreciated?
So yeah, this is a social for women to join. So we have people like chief office people looking into like women's pay gap differences and also pay equity. And during our company meetings, we have them take us through, giving us a high level in which areas are we struggling. So I'm not 100% like involved in this, but I do see that the leadership team is looking at areas where we're not having female leaders in. Yeah, I really liked this picture, but I don't know too much about it.
Excellent. I think it's very important to push at every level. Sometimes we see companies do a lot at the entry level, but not necessarily at the progression levels. And it is really important to have initiatives at every level. Yeah. I'm also waiting for questions, and while waiting for questions, kind of asking my own questions as well. One of the things that I would like to know a little bit more is about you mentioned remote working and how that affects or that is managed in your company. How does remote teamwork work? And do you establish team contracts, or there are team policies? How do you achieve efficiency while working as a team, but maybe in very remote locations?
Okay, so we don't necessarily have a team policy, contract, or a code of conduct, but we do have tools and technologies in place for us to follow through. So, this is a cloud-driven company. I can't speak to the non-cloud-driven companies, but everything we do is using the cloud tools such as Google Suite, what I spoke about, Miro, RingCentral, which is like our online communication system, which apart from Google Meet, the list does go on. So with how my team manages it is that it's already, we have the team meeting and we establish what works for us. And so when we talk about it, we decided, meet 3-4 times a week, and the other continuous improvement team on a weekly cadence, and then the whole of CI would be on a bi-weekly cadence, still utilizing the collaborative tools that we have. And also we have a Google group chat to stay in contact and discuss projects that we may have. So don't just wait on having the meeting. You have email, you have a group chat, you have different tools to like ping people and tell them, you need to work on this because I've already done my part. You're very visible in the remote space. It just makes it very easy because, Red Hat as a whole, meaning like other teams within Red Hat are also leveraging the same cloud collaborative tools to make it, just consistent and reliable.
I think Glenn's question was similar. Working from home with a big team, does this affect your learning process or the learning process of, maybe I'll expand this question, and Glenn, correct me if I'm misinterpreting it. Building on what you said, given people start companies at various different stages, somebody can be new, somebody can be there for 10 years. How do you manage boarding people on when, all work is remote, basically?
Okay, so again, depending on the team and how they want to do the onboarding, generally what you do, you have a buddy and you have an agenda. So you're given that agenda and then the buddy, and then they're literally there for you 24, well, not 24/7, but the working hours until your onboarding is complete. So the learning process, everything's virtual. So even now, I'm taking you through my slides and, I'm showing you how things are done. This is what this is how the learning process happens. And not only that, because I know that some people learn differently. So here's me showing you, but we can reverse that. You could be showing me what you've learned during that time. And then we can have a retro. And what that retro is now the team is looking at you and saying, how was your onboarding? Do you feel like you missed anything? Are you comfortable? Do you want to learn anything else during your free time? And then when you are, we give you projects. And then again, that's still a learning curve too.
Could I ask a little bit about tracking progress remotely? We struggle with that just through the group projects that we're managing. It is difficult to see what people are doing because you're not just around them all the time. There's that, that saturated awareness that you get in an office space, which isn't present. I mean, we have tools like Trello, but they are quite limited in the amount of information that they give us about progress. How do you handle that remotely with your teams?
So we use Jira, which is our sprint planning. I don't know too much about Trello, but it probably is different because so with Jira, we have a project manager and you pretty much are given a task and you're responsible for that task. And when you're navigating through it together, you can't get out of not doing something. You're on the hook for, what you applied for. So that's how you track it. And also when you're working as a team, so let's just say you're using Trello but you don't have all the information. The students or whoever should have a generalized folder with all the work that they've been working on. So that's where you would have a look and see like the progress and, it'll tell you who was it created by, when was it last updated. And that's when what the, work that they've been doing.
It makes me so happy to hear some of the advice I've been giving to year 2 project students is being repeated here. Maybe following up on that, how would you can contrast teamwork? Of course, it's going to be at different seriousness levels. Group work projects at the university versus what you needed to learn and maybe adapt to in the industry.
Yeah. So I'll have to reference back to my career slide. Let me just see if I can go back to that. Was it this one? Yes. So on working remotely, because working in a group in education, from my personal experience, is all about, personal responsibility, understanding one another's ways of working and skills. But it is hard because we're also trying to figure out what we like to do in certain things and what works best for everyone in the group. We all have different priorities. Someone might want to party, someone actually is taking it seriously. So firstly, someone might want to, focus on the coding, and then there's not a lot of visibility as to what they're doing or what they've completed. In other words, occasionally there are misalignments and conflicts as we're trying to adapt to the team's dynamic. But in industry, it is different because going into a space where there are already processes and hierarchies in place for you to adapt to, you're guided and directed to take ownership of your specialized areas. There's an open space for you to voice your opinion without judgment and conflict, though this is also dependent on the company's value and culture. So I know when I was working in a group, many times, I wanted to have fun, but also work on a documentation, whereas this other guy was wanting to code all the time. But, you're coding, but then you're not really linking it to what we're doing. So again, like we have those discussions and have those team meetings just to voice your concerns. So in corporate, it's also the same. Each one of us goes into a position knowing what we're doing, what we're hired to do, and what we specialize in to drive success. When there is conflicts and different opinions, we have a team meeting to flush out those issues and come to a team decision as long as we're all on the same page and on the same board with our next steps.
I see a question from Glenn, and maybe I'll kind of flow it from what you just said, team dynamics especially. When you're working from home or a majority of your team is working remotely, how do you manage to get that human aspect in, like improve human interactions or making sure that you connect at that level as well as colleagues?
Yeah, so are you saying like personal connection with my colleagues too?
Yes. Okay. There is maybe if I read the question, you mentioned that you say you're working from home. Doesn't this have a direct effect on basic human interaction? That's the question I a little bit reworded to have a flow from the previous question.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of a way to phrase it, because I did actually go into the office at Red Hat for 2 years before we went into COVID. So I kind of already had some connection, but if you were to go straight in working remotely, so not only do we have team meetings, which is very, work-based, we also have coffee breaks. it's like a coffee hour. You know, we talk about our personal life, what we're doing on the weekend, getting to know each other. And also for them in the US, they actually go out for beer breaks, you know, after work. But then because I'm over here, they do say that they'll fly me out when the time is ready. So in a way, I'm like connecting with them, but just not physically yet. So if you're trying to connect with people outside of your team, you can participate in the social side of the company. You know, they all have bingo events on a Friday evening, you know, and then you make friends within your region. And that's how you also could connect with them in a personal level. Like, oh, I live, you know, just around here. Do you want to come, like, go out for a tea or something? And also, you know, people that are going to maternity, we also went in to celebrate someone going off on maternity. So it doesn't affect the human interaction because there are other ways. You know, you use WhatsApp, you phone people, it's just the same.
I'm aware you have a hard stop in about 8 minutes time, but I wonder if I could ask one question. We normally ask alumni about what we could have done better to have made your life easier at the end of your course. I'm going to be more specific than that. Given that this is Athena Swan, I'm going to say, what could we do, given your experience? And I'm sure some things have changed since then, but what could we do to make it easier for women to engage more effectively? Is there anything that we could do to enable women to do the work? That could be teamwork or other aspects of the curriculum better from your experience. Maybe other subjects that we could cover, any other training that we could offer.
Okay. So could I give like a project example of when I was at Brunel?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, when we used to have those team meetings and of like what we're doing and everything else, I don't think there was ever like, we never made it clear as to who was responsible for making sure work was done. And I feel like as a you know, someone we're looking to, you know, like Mark, for example, we kind of, it would be good if you said, you know, let's talk about it as a team. Who wants to take ownership of the administration? Like, are you tracking this person doing this, this, and this? Because I feel like when you're like left to do your own thing, people just they just don't do what they're supposed to do. Then they just leave. And also, like, sometimes there could be conflicts as well, because one person might want to take ownership, but the other person's like, I don't want you to do that. Who are you to say, you know, you're taking part or leading the team? But then with someone with a higher, you know, direction, then at least it would help.
I'm glad to hear this response as well, because this is something we introduced to year 2 projects, rotation of leadership roles and having a Scrum Master and product owner as well. So it's good to hear that confirmation. So maybe we'll do a little bit more formally, just reinforcing that. We're slowly wrapping up. I want to give you 5 minutes before, because you have a 3 o'clock that you need to get to. So I suggest we wrap up. One of the questions I see in the chat, this is the second time, could our students connect to you through LinkedIn or get in touch you in any other means? Or here they reach out to me. There you go. There we go. Answering my own question. Excellent. Thank you very much for this brilliant presentation. Thank you for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you so much.